Hello everyone, this is Yuri the Blender Magus, and welcome back to creating Anubis. So in this part, we're gonna start making some of these accessories he has on, and we're just gonna hand model these because I see no reason to sculpt them. We might run a cloth physics sim to get some of the details on this piece of cloth here, and yeah, this really shouldn't be too difficult. So we'll just get started. But before we do that, actually, I did my progress didn't save from the last tutorial when I closed my laptop, and I had to remake the teeth. And so because I remade them on my own time, I decided to make them a bit more closer to realistic dog teeth than we did in the previous video. So I have exported this object as an OBJ and placed a link to it in the description. So you have access to these teeth and the gums. So I'll just hide everything else. So if you go to the OBJ file, you'll have this object right here. Okay, and you can use this in your own mouth for Anubis, or you could just, keep it in stock for other canines that you'll be creating. But I wanted to do that because I didn't want it to be too different from what you guys are having. So, and the other thing that we're gonna do is, real quick, we're just gonna go back into sculpt mode with this guy because we want to extend this region of the upper mouth. So we're going to go back to dynamic topology, and once we do that, we don't need it at 3. We're gonna bring it up to 5, and then we're gonna get the inflate brush, and we're just going to don't zoom in too much, but we do want to just extend this out. So increase the brush size. Oh yeah, and I turned off symmetry last time, so make sure you turn that back on. Yeah, we just want to increase that, and we can smooth some of that up. And we're actually gonna bring the inflate brush over this whole region just so that we can, when we smooth it, it'll be a lot better. This is the only bit of sculpting we'll be doing because every other part of the mesh I'm very happy with. So we're just fixing this more so for my my personal preference. But I don't want to make too many changes while I'm off screen from you guys. There we go, that's perfect aside from that. Okay, and then increase the brush size a little bit more. Let's get anything but the grab tool. So anything but the grab tool at this point. I've been thoroughly convinced that the grab tool sucks in Blender 2.81. Either it sucks or I just forgot how to use it. And I don't think I have, but yeah, so we'll just go with that. That is exactly what I wanted right there. That's exactly what I wanted. Oh man, it's rare you actually get 100% what you want. So yeah, and then we're actually gonna move some of these side parts out a little bit, and the reason we're doing that is just so that we can guarantee the top part of the mouth will overlap over the bottom part. Because I don't recall me specifying that should be the case, and so I am specifying it now. And we'll be able, once we get to rigging, we'll be able to rig the jaw so that we can fully see all the teeth and whatnot. So but we'll worry about rigging when we get to it. We still haven't even finished creating a character. So I don't think that there'll be too much time lapse in this part because we'll be straight up modeling. But I might time lapse some overly repetitive parts of the process. So that part of the tutorial is pretty much over as far as going periods of time without hearing my teaching voice. Okay, that's exactly what we wanted from that fix up. So we'll go back to layout. Okay, so while we make the cloth, actually, we want to actually export this sculpt. We'll bring it back in when we start retopologizing, but we want to make the these ornaments attached to this, or at least a model with these similar proportions, without having to fully retopologize it. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to File, Export, Wavefront OBJ, and we'll go. I'm going to go to where I save all my Blender stuff, and Anubis tutorial. Okay, right. So we'll just save this as Anubis high poly. All right. And we'll export that. It might take a minute to export, but as soon as it's done exporting, we'll then go back. Well, I'll just come back to you guys when it's done. All right, so it's finished exporting. So I want you to take notice that down here it says the memory that this file is using is about 1 gigabyte. Now that is way too high to do anything else in Blender effectively. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to our decimate modifier. I like to collapse it. So we're going to go from 1, and we're actually going to go to like 0.4. And so we're reducing our face count by about 60%. So we have 400,000 instead of 1 million. And let's go on the wireframe, and let's turn on oh, here it is. Let's turn on all edges, and we want to triangulate this, and then symmetrize. Okay, so we still have our overall shape. It hasn't messed with the any of the holes or things like that in our mesh, but we actually want to reduce this a bit more. So I'm going to reduce it to 0.2. Okay, so we have significantly less vertices to work with in this object here, which is exactly what we wanted, and we don't get any of that mess from the remesher. And it's also tried its best to keep all of our little details. But we're not going to use this mesh for retopology. We're using this mesh for retopology and to put our ornaments and stuff on. We're going to use the one that we exported for making our maps and things like that. So let's apply that, and that will significantly reduce our usage of memory, or at least it should. But even if it doesn't, I'm going to do another trick that'll reduce our memory count even more. which is to export this as a retopology object. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to export and export this where you put your high poly, just so that it's in the same place. And we're gonna, instead of calling this high poly, we're gonna call this retopo obj. The retopo obj. And again, the reason we're calling it the retopo obj is because we're going to be using it for retopology, but we're not retopologizing in this video. Okay, so now what you want to actually do is you want to go to a brand new Blender file, and you can save this if you want. And so this mesh is still going to be, you know, this, we're in a new file, but when we import our retopo object, let's go to recent. Here we go. Retopo. Oh, we imported the wrong thing. Make sure you click on the OBJ and not the MTL. Give it a minute, and there we go. So you see that even though we decimated this in the last file, it had 800 megabytes versus 139. So this is definitely a lot better to use than or to, you know, go work with than the other one. Now I have already exported my teeth, so we can also import the teeth, and I put the teeth in the on my desktop because of easeability. And there we go. We can make some more eyes later. But now what we want to do is we can do what we did last time when we brought in our image, just so that we can nope, make that the timeline. Go up here, here it is. Yeah, make sure it's the image editor and open and find your image. So I'll be back when I remember where I saved it. All right, so we have our image and we can start making the ornaments. So what we want to do is we'll start off with this skirt region here. So let's hit Shift A and we'll add a circle. And we'll make this 12 vertices. And that's that. We don't need anything else. And let's tab and edit mode with the circle. G and Z. Bring it up on the Z or Z if you're from Europe. I'm American, therefore I will be using the American terminology, which is Z. Anyway. So let's smooth that up a little bit. Yeah, so I just scaled that on the y-axis to kind of match the shape of the torso here. And we'll just scale this a little bit on the x-axis. And so we kind of want the belt to be a bit up there, right? And then we'll extrude it down like so. And then we can, well, we'll add a solidify modifier to it. In fact, that means we can scale it out a little bit more. And let's go to our modifier stack, add solidify, and just increase the thickness a little bit. Boom, there you go. So now let's go on ahead and move some of that back. So you see here it has two parts. Now this is a bit, you know, unrealistic, but so we'll put this like circular part on top of the side there, and we'll make this part here. But what what I'm getting at is that there's a split here, and it's a bit closer to the top. So, oh, you know what? I don't think I have my screencast keys on. There you go. Sorry about that, guys. Now, just add an edge loop in there and scale that in. That's fine. You want to scale these down. There you go. And shade smooth. So now another thing you'll definitely want to do, because these are kind of shinier objects, you just want to crease that up, and when you add your subdivision surface, it'll be nice and sharp for you. Now you want to crease these parts here as well, and yeah, we'll add another vertex in there. Why not? I haven't added the mirror modifier yet, and that is because there's really no need right now. Yeah, there's really not a need to do that. Particularly because this is, you know, not a mirrored surface. So, alright, so we have this part of the belt. Now what we're going to do is we'll make the circle in the center there, and we'll duplicate that for this one here as well. Make sure your cursor's still in the center there, and go back to circle. The circle creation will be our friend for the duration of this portion of the video. So I'm just scaling this part in, and I'm going to hit E-extrude, right click, and scale that in. This is a new file, so we don't have proportional editing turned on, so if you do, just make sure you hit O to turn it off. Now, we want to hit Control F and grid fill these. And you want to grid fill them with a span of 2 and a offset of 2, so that way it's all the way in the center there. And then we can E-extrude this, add an edge loop, hit 3, select all these faces, and then the faces on top, you can hit C to select that a bit faster, and then Alt Q or vertex and smooth vertices. Again, right click on that and click change shortcut or add shortcut is what you'll have. Okay. Next you want to Alt S scale that up. Go back to 2, go to edge mode, Alt S scale this up as well. G and Z, bring that down on the Z axis. And last thing, we want to bring this edge closer to that surface there, and then just hit G and Z to bring that down. Now what that did is that created some space in between that part there. Now, just add another edge loop in here just to give that some form. And now we're going to add a subdivision surface modifier. And hit W, shade smooth, and then we're going to do what we did before. Crease this up. And what you can do for this part is, Control R, right click, left click, or is it right? It's left click. Okay, I'm gonna do that again just so I know. Okay, it's Control R, left click, left click. Okay, it's left click twice. Anyway, and once you have that in the center there, you want to hit Control B, and that bevels it. And then you can hit G twice to edge slide that. Well, nah, you can just leave that alone. Edge slide it individually, and boom, we have creased edges there. Then you want to do the same thing. You just want to do the same thing on the inside as well. Boom. All right. So we have that. Next, what you want to do, we're just going to try to smooth this a bit more to give it a more roundish type shape. We just smooth this part here. There we go. There it is. That's what we're looking for right there. Okay. And last but not least, just so that there's some data here, we can grid fill this as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be to the specifications of the last one, but just do it just so that you know, when we go back later and add the UVs to this guy, it'll be good. So you might have to change the span, you know, for just bottom part, because it's not going to always line up with the top, but that's fine. Just as long as the line here is in the center and you have faces that look like this, you're doing the right thing. And you also want to crease that as well. And you can grab these bottom faces and inset them. Alright, so we have that. We're just going to take this in edit mode. Make sure you keep all of your object origins in the center. You see, if I move this in object mode, I'm moving this little orange dot as well. I don't want to do that. I want to move the object in edit mode so that the origin point stays where it is, because I can rotate this way in object mode, but in edit mode I can rotate it in the center, and that's what we want. So let's rotate this about 90 degrees on the negative. Boom. And we're just going to scale that down just so that it fits this area. Okay, you want to G, bring it on the Y, and we almost have it. Just move it up a little bit more. Maybe scale it up. Nah, we'll scale it down. Yes, that's what we want. That's just what we want. And you know what? Don't be afraid to intersect this with the object. Yeah, don't be afraid to do that, because it's, you know, that's how it's supposed to look anyway. So we have that part there. Now for the rest of the skirt area, I'm gonna go back into edit mode on this object. Make sure we're in. Are those the same? No. Just make sure that you're selecting the same edge there. SX. Make sure proportional editing is on. Just to make sure. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab one of these. Whoops. You want to grab one of these faces. So I'm going to take this one. And you want to hit Shift D to duplicate it. And because we have the solidify modifier on this object, this face, this individual face has thickness on it. Hit Alt O to go into non-connected. So proportional editing has changed since the last time, and I'm not quite sure how to click on it so that it brings up all its individual settings, but basically the keyboard shortcut for it to cut it on is O, and then to change it to connected verts only is Alt O. Okay, so just in case that wasn't clear earlier, and if it wasn't, I do apologize. That's interesting. Where did these sharps come from? Okay, anyway, ignore that. So we're just gonna bring that down to about there, and we'll rotate it a little. Blender just crashed. I'll be right back. So we're just gonna redo that last part that we did in the section before Blender decided to crap out on me. So yeah, we're gonna save this as part 6 real quick, just so that it doesn't do that again, and we don't have to do the steps. Alright, there we go. So, solid view. We're gonna go back. I'm gonna speed up this part because I've already done it. Well, I guess it's really not that far anyway. So, just put that face there and rotate it a little bit. And then we're gonna, in edge mode, we're just gonna start making some extrusions with this. So we're actually just gonna bring that part out a little bit. Okay, and we're just gonna extrude all the way around the mesh. So we'll just do it in the front view first, and we'll change our proportions when we get to the side view. So now that we have that, hit 3, go back into face mode, make sure you hit O for proportional editing, and you want to bring that out. And then again, you want to make sure it's on the connected proportional editing. So hit Alt O, and I have to turn back on my screencast keys because Blender crashed. Anyway. Alright, okay. So you can just rotate that out, and when you rotate this part out and you upscale the influence, it'll rotate everything else and along that radius, which will make turning things like that a lot easier, or at least a lot faster. Unnecessarily easier, but well, yeah, it is easier if it's faster, I guess. Well, I don't know about that. I have to look into that. Anyway, so, and we're just going to bring this around some more. So because we have proportional editing turned on, normally you wouldn't be able to rotate an edge, but because things are connected to the edge, you can rotate the stuff behind it. So that's I think that's a good little tip to know. And also make sure you don't have the skirt so close to the skin, because when we rig it, we're gonna need a little bit of space here so that it doesn't peek through when the character starts moving. Okay. And then we'll continue to extrude this guy. And we'll do something over the tail. Yeah, do something a little over the tail. So 3, bring that, rotate that way. Bring it up a little bit. In fact, we don't even necessarily have to touch the tail. One thing we do want to do, hit period, make sure you're centered on this area here. We're going to select this, make sure you're in edge mode. We're going to bring this part of the mesh up a little bit. Actually, I was going to make like a hole for the tail, but we really don't need to. We could just move that part of the mesh up and we still get the same effect. So we can make a hole for the tail and the skirt if we want, but we do want to bring this part of it over this, and then extrude it, rotate it, and bring it up like that. Okay, make sure you grab this vertex here, move it up. Now, technically, you're really not supposed to be modeling with the subdivision modifier turned on, and so you don't have to. I do just because it helps me see what the end result of the mesh will be, but it is a unrealistic representation of the actual geometry that you have. So just turn it off sometimes and make sure that your topology and things are right, and the flow of your verts are good versus how they look in the subdivide mode, because it is a bit different. Well, not a bit, it's drastically different. So we have that basic part. Now we need to connect these parts, but we want a few more vertices in here to work with. So we'll just bevel these out, and then we can start extruding. But before we do that, let's add some over here as well. Okay. Whoops. So this is the first one, and so this is the second one. We'll just call this the first one, and this is the second one. So we actually want to just hit F to make that a face, and then Control R to add about 3 edge loops in there, and then we just want to bring those out. Okay. All right. Now that we have these edges here, we can move them around so that it matches properly. Okay. Let's go to vertex select just to be a bit more precise with our movements here. Okay, now certainly don't be afraid to add more loops in case you know, the few aren't cutting it. In fact, I encourage that just so that we can, you know, further. Whoops, we don't want that just yet. Try to, and a tip for modeling, I try to add vertices as I need them. And the reason being is because when you're working, it's a lot easier to mess with general forms rather than to edit. Like when you want to edit an entire shape of something, it's better to edit that shape when there's very little detail on it versus a whole bunch of detail. So I try to add vertices, you know, as the project goes on, so that during these simple parts, you know, I can make as general or broad as changes as I need to without really destroying my mesh. Okay. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna take this part here, go in the front view, and just extrude that down. You can scale it up if you want, or if you feel like you need to. You can scale it on the X as well. Just gonna extrude this part down a little bit. Then we can rotate it up like so. Alt Q to smooth in a little bit, and there we go. So count the amount of faces that are here, and we have 1, 2, or vertices. So we have 1, 2, 3. Well, actually, I can select them. So we have 6 verts here. So we want to make sure that when we merge these, we merge them to these 6 verts, or 6 corresponding verts. So 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6. Okay, that's good. So actually, gonna make faces with this. Okay. Reason for that, again, topology purposes, you want loops around the edges of your models. You want loops instead of just a regular assortment of faces. And so, because this was a real general shape, we can bevel this and add a couple of more vertices in there, and that won't destroy the mesh at all. Just edge slide that a couple of times. And let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Couldn't have hoped for a better result there. Honestly, that's no joke. And so, you know, the designs on these, they seem like they're, you know, metal, but that's only because of the material on them. This is just going to be cloth as well. So we'll color the texture of these different colors on there, so it doesn't necessarily have to match up with the object. But this side, I bet you, has more than we need. Yep. So we can just get rid of that edge loop right there, and boom, there we go. So now this part I don't necessarily have to talk through. You just want to go in and fix the general shape of the mesh. Make sure that it's the shape that you want. You know, you can make any kind of shape that you guys want. I want to try to follow the picture, just because this is my personal. I drew this design of Anubis, and so I want to make sure that the model somewhat represents that original picture. I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison of the original picture to the model we create, just to see, you know, how close we actually were. So I'll be back. So once you have this part of the skirt, whoops, caps lock, I don't know why caps lock was on. Anyway, sorry about that. Ignore this. So once we have this part of the skirt, we can actually duplicate it to get that other part. So we'll just Shift D that, SX -1, boom. That's how my 11th grade math teacher used to say that. Anyway, we're going to, what is it, Alt N, flip the normals and move that this way. Okay, so we have our skirt there, but we want to make some adjustments to this one so that the top one is actually overlapping. So we can actually PN separate this for now. That way we're not even worried about ruining the topology on the other one. And again, make sure that connected is on with your proportional editing, and start moving this skirt, or this portion of the skirt, inward a little bit. And then we can actually, just to help with this, we can also move some of this front skirt up, just so that it'll make it easier to not intersect the objects, and also get the effect that we want. See that? Yeah. So if you see me doing a thing and you think of something that might be a faster way to do it, you go on ahead and do it. If if something works for you, I would suggest that you pursue it. We're gonna do something about this tail, and I know just what we're gonna do. We'll add a front and back cloth piece to that. That way that'll cover that up nicely. Because it's like every part of him is covered but his cheeks. But his cheeks, anyway. I'm immature. So we have the skirt pretty much finished. So we're going to grab that, and like I said, we're just going to use this as even better. What you want to do is hold Alt and D to duplicate that. So that's an instance of this object. So when I tab into edit mode, I scale that object, or this object in the center here, it scales the other one. But if I go into object mode and scale this guy down or whatever, even though that's scaled down, it still follows that. So that's just something cool to note. So anyway, for this guy, whoops. Do I want to bring the... No. So I actually don't want to do that. Why? Because, again, I said our origin point should stay in the center here. And if you wanted to duplicate an instance of that, you actually would want your origin point at the model. And that really doesn't matter that much, so we can just make it the same object. Boom, boom. Now, I'm doing these tutorials a bit differently than the ones I used to. I used to straight up model the entire object before I would make the tutorial, but that took ages to do, and I need to make these tutorials as well and as quickly as possible. And since these are free and I'm not selling them, I figured you guys might be able to handle that. So yeah, we'll just go with that. it up. Boom. Okay, just go over your mesh and make sure that everything is fine and dandy. There we go, that's what I was looking for. Just want to bring that up a little bit more. Okay. And then we can actually bring that down a little bit also. Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. Phew, how long have I been recording? Alright, so I guess we'll... I don't really want to cut this part off here, but... because we didn't really do a whole hell of a lot, but we might as well. Honestly, though, let's cover up his cheeks before we do that. So, we can actually use a face from this object here. So just grab one of these faces, hit Shift D to duplicate it, and R to rotate it twice. And then what we can do is scale it up. Let's go into edge select mode. We can grab this part here and move it down a little bit. Okay, we can grab these parts and move them up. Because it's cloth, cloth isn't usually symmetrical anyway, so. And we're not doing double the work with this. I'm gonna show you how you can get it done pretty quickly. So we just made some quick faces here with the bevel tool. And now what we want is we're just gonna move that up like so. Get some of these faces. Well, actually, we'll go in here. So first we'll separate this. That way we can just worry about that. And then you want to go in and select those two vertices there and delete them so that we have this here. This will give us the hole so that we can go around the tail. Okay. Make sure you do that. Make sure you do that. Okay. And then you can start bringing some of these parts out like so. Because honestly, I think the design for this could be better. If you got a skirt here, you don't necessarily have this kind of cloth there. In fact, if anything, that cloth would go over the skirt. But regardless, we actually could just leave that part of the design out and instead move it to the back to cover up his cheeks. Because this is America, and cheeks are not public cheeks. We don't need to look at public cheeks. All right. So this is damn near done. Excuse my French. I think damn is not that bad of a word, but I do set these videos so that YouTube knows that they're necessarily not for kids, because I will slip up sometimes. I try to edit out all the major curse words that might happen, because that's kind of, you know, unprofessional if you're trying to record a tutorial. That's why I don't think I'm gonna sell any more tutorial series. I think I'm just gonna make this a channel for character tutorials, because I don't see many people doing them, and I'm hoping that you know, if I just start doing my series again, people will realize that you know, once I've made a few more after this one, that I have a more extensive library of character creation tutorials, and they'll want to come watch me. But there we go. We have the skirt pretty much created. So that'll be it for this part. In the next part, we're gonna go on ahead and make his like collar thing or whatever. And if we have time in that, we'll try to make some of the other accessories as well. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next part.